Alright, good morning everyone. We are here with break 428. This is the 26 League Heroes combo break featuring the 26 League Heroes case, the two 26 League Heroes hobby boxes and 5 26 League Heroes starter packs. Our team list for this one: Broncos, George Grispos; Raiders, Keith Hunter; Bulldogs, Johnny D; Sharks, Johnny D; Dolphins, Lee Marschall; Titans, Johnny D; Manly, Archie Williams; Storm, Johnny D; Knights, Keith Hunter; Cowboys, Stephen Casey; Eels, Stephen Casey; Panthers, George Grispos; Rabbitohs, Stephen Casey; Dragons, Johnny D; Roosters, Dean Mich; Warriors, Daniel Sorich; Tigers, Johnny D. Alright. So as we don't see most of it during the break, here we are, a bit of a glimpse. This is our retail case, which we'll get into shortly. For now, that can go over there. We have our two hobby boxes, which will be last. And we have our 5 starter packs, which is where we will start the break. Let me bring the bin over and let's get into it. Hope everyone enjoyed their Easter long weekend. Alright. So we'll just crack all the starter packs open and get the bonus packs out. New mega combo listed this morning. To be honest, I can't even remember what it's got in it. I know it's got a little bit of everything, but instead of a locker box, we now have a blaster box. So that was listed this morning, guys. Alright, that's them 5 open. Let's grab the scissors. Alright, first up, Mr. Tom Starling for the Raiders. Let's bring the chat up and see if anyone's saying good morning. Not at the moment, that's alright. I can see a few people have joined. Welcome to the break. Milwaukee Photo Ika for the Titans. Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Reece Welsh for the Broncos. There's a decent one. Right, we can get rid of that out of our way. Lee Marshall, good morning. Bang Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Luminous Casey McLean for Panthers. Colour die cut Jack Hetherington for the Knights. Luminous Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. League Heads James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Jerome Hughes for the Storm. Bang, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous Ali Briginshaw for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. We've got a Clive Churchill. League heads, Mich Kenny for the Panthers. Luminous Mawaki Fodawaika for Titans. League heads, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Payne Huss for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Bo Fermor for the Titans. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Triumph for the Roosters. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Game Breakers, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Luminous Hamoli Olika Atu for Manly. Colour Die Cut Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. League heads, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. 3 packets are left for our starter packs. Bang Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Angus Crichton for the Roosters. League heads, Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Alright, lucky last. League heads, Sam Verrills for the Titans. Phoenix Crossland, Luminous for the Knights. And that's the end of them. Alright guys, I'm just going to get this case open and the boxes out, and we're going to get stuck into that one. To be fair, I haven't checked the pick the score giveaway, but our top tipper for this round, one of two who got the perfect round, but Craig Goodsir got the top tipper with only a margin of 2. So congratulations to Craig. I will be fixing that one up after this, and I'll make sure I check out pick the score giveaway and list the new one. So make sure you check the group this afternoon, get your entries into that one. Tomorrow's break was listed for 10 AM, guys. Unfortunately, we had to postpone that only by a couple of hours. Hoping that we can get started by 12 o'clock, but we'll see what happens, and I'll try and comment on the post before and when I go. Alright, here we go. New pick your team hobby case break listed this morning. And another 2 coming soon. I noticed we've sold a few spots this morning. I haven't had a chance to go back and mark them off, so I'm not sure what's still available. Oh, stop floating on me. There we go. Game breakers, Olivia Koenig for the Roosters. Luminous Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. League heads Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Oh, Luminous Luca Moretti for the Eels. Die cut Jesse Arthurs for the Broncos. Luminous James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. Game breakers Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. League heads Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous Val Holmes, come on, for the Dragons. That's not a good start, guys. Bang Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Big Tino for the Titans. Game breakers Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous Kale Arrow for the Sharks. Red Triumph for the Bulldogs. Luminous Cody Nicarima for the Dolphins. League heads Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Jason Saab for Manly. Game breakers Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Colour die cut Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Gehamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. League heads Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Jacob Preston for Bulldogs. Game breakers Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Bang, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Keezy Apps for Tigers. League Heads Cody Nicarima for the Dolphins. Luminous Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Golden Triumph. Luminous Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Game Breakers Mawaki Photo Ika for the Titans. Luminous Kalen Ponga for the Knights. League Heads Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Liam Martin for Panthers. League Heads Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Asaya Youngie for the Eels. Bang Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. League Heads Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Colour die cut Egan Butcher for the Roosters. Luminous Jerome Luai for the Tigers. League Heads Alex Twile for the Tigers. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. Red Triumph Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Aleka Halasima for the Warriors. League Heads Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hammer for the Dolphins. Game Breakers Ben Trbojevic for Manly. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Bang Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks. League Heads Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Colour die cut Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. League heads Stefano Utokumanu for Storm. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Bang Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Gladiators, Katoni Stags for the Broncos, number 467. Luminous Nelson Sofa Solomona for Storm. 3 packets left for our first box. Game Breakers, Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. Luminous Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Yeah, it looked a bit scary. Big Tino Mercury for the Titans, number 74. Luminous Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Bang Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Apasai Coruscant for Tigers. Let's tidy these cards up. Try not to make a mess. Alright. Box number 2. Bang Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. League heads Alex Twile for Tigers. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Game Breakers Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. League heads Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Tuikami Kamika for Storm. Game Breakers Big Tino for the Titans. Luminous Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Colour die cut Griffin Neem for the Cowboys. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. League heads Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Mercury Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm, number 353. Luminous White for the Roosters. Game Breakers Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. League heads Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Bang Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for Knights. League heads Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Xavier Willison, Luminous for the Broncos. Colour die cut Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. Game Breakers Abby Church for the Eels. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators Benny Trbojevic for Manly, number 576. Connor Tracy, Luminous for the Bulldogs. League heads Jack Williams for the Eels. Luminous Roger Tuivasa Sheck for Warriors. Colour die cut Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Game Breakers Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Terrell May for the Tigers. Bang Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. League heads Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Stefano Utikamanu for Storm. Die cut Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. League Heads Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Bo Fermor for Titans. Game Breakers Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Bang Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Alex Twal for the Tigers. Red Triumph for the Tigers. Luminous Tyron Wishart for Storm. League Heads Braden Trindle for Sharks. Luminous Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Bang KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Game Breakers Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Sam Verrills for the Titans. Colour die cut Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Bradman Best for the Knights. League Heads Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. Red Triumph Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Felice Kafusi for the Dolphins. Game Breakers Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous Ethan Strange for Raiders. League Heads Murray Talagi for Cowboys. These are nice looking cards. Thanks, Mozzie. They are pretty much all available. Unfortunately, some are in stock, some aren't, but they're all available on the website to have a look at or to purchase. Lachlan Ilias, Luminous for the Dragons. You can buy sealed boxes, single cards, combos, plenty of options. Game Breakers Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Billy Smith for the Roosters. League Heads Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. Bang Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Lyshan Albert Jones for the Warriors. League heads Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. Game breakers James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Leka Halasima for the Warriors. League heads Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Hammer Fido for the Dolphins. Colour die cut Sam Walker for Roosters. Luminous Cohen Hess for Cowboys. Hey Panthers! Game breakers Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks. Bang Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Yeah, we've got a couple already. We hit a decent one in the starter packs. So that'll be interesting at the end when we get to reveal that one. Jermaine Isako, league heads for the Dolphins. Pretty sure you'll like that one too. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Mercury Zach Lomax for the Eels, number 185. That's a good thing about doing case breaks. Obviously not every box is going to have those big hits in it, but doing the case break, you know you're going to get some decent hits. You just hope it's for your team at the end. You put the Tago in the wrong team. Oh, yep, cheers. I did that yesterday afternoon. I just, when I was doing the pictures, I found them. Dean Mariner for Broncos. And I've just put that in there because, yeah, my bad. Oh. Game breakers Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. League heads Big Tino for the Titans. Luminous Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Bang Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. 20-11. League heads Clinton Gutherson for Dragons. Valami Kikau, Luminous for Bulldogs. Die cut Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous Apisai Coruscant for Tigers. Game breakers Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous Liam Martin for Panthers. Red Triumph, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. I don't know, I was putting that in and it looked like a Sharks card. I had to double check then. League heads, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Luca Moretti for the Eels. I'm going to blame the tray. I don't have my sticker tray to tell me what. Bang, Tyron Wishart for the Storm. Luminous, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. League head, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Luminous, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Game breakers, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators, Bradman Best for the Knights, number 542. Luminous, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. League heads, Apisai Coruscant for Tigers. Luminous, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Bang, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Xavier Coates for the Storm. Game breakers, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Herbie Farmer for the Dolphins. Colour die cut, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. League heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Abby Church for the Eels. Game breakers, Olivia Koenig for the Knights. Luminous, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Olivia Higgins, not Koenig. My bad. League heads, Joash for the Eels. Luminous, Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Game breakers, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous, Dylan Brown for the Knights. Bang, Cody Nikorima for the Dolphins. Luminous, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. League heads, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Red Triumph for the Raiders. Luminous Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Game Breakers Billy Smith for the Roosters. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Colour die cut Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Last two packets for our third box. Bang Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Jerome Luai for Tigers. And we have an Origin Predictor. Luminous Val Holmes for the Dragons. And that's the end of the box. So we see no more luck with the last packet when I don't call Lucky Lux. Alright, box number 4. Bang Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League Heads Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Game Breakers KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Colour die cut Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Luminous Asaya Papali'i for Panthers. League Heads Jacob Little for the Dragons. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Alex Seafarth for Tigers. Dally M Rookie of the Year. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Elafiana Khan-Piera for Titans. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. Bang, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Jordan Ricky for Broncos. Game Breakers, Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Luminous, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. League Heads, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Gladiators, Brian To'o for Panthers, number 367. Luminous, Harry Grant for the Storm. League Heads, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous, Renato Militalo for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Bang, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous, Zach Labert for the Cowboys. League Heads, Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Mercury, Aleka Halasima for the Warriors, number 104. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. Game Breakers, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, Isaiah Katoa for the Dolphins. Colour Die Cut, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Luminous, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Bang, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Ben Trbojevic for Manly. League Heads, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Game Breakers, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Will Penasini for the Eels. League Heads, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous, Jonah Pezzett for the Storm. Red Triumph, Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous, Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Bang, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. League Heads Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Game Breakers Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Connolly Lumi Lou for Dolphins. Stefano Yitkamanu for Storm. Luminous Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. League Heads Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tanila Paseka for Manly. Game Breakers Apisai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. Bang, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Triumph for the Roosters. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. League Heads Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Cameron Munster for Storm. Game Breakers Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous Brian Kelly for the Titans. League Heads Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Bailey Simpson for the Eels. Colour Die Cut Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Alright. Box number 5. Colour Die Cut Charlie Staines for the Tigers. Luminous Big Tino for the Titans. Red Triumph Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Kale Arrow for the Sharks. Game breakers, Emily Bass for the Tigers. Luminous, Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. Jalen de Groot Bang for the Titans. Luminous, Isaac Tago for Panthers. League Heads, Samula Fainu for Tigers. Luminous, Alifiana Khan Piera for Titans. Game breakers, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Addo Carr for the Eels. Yeah, it's getting a bit warm. League Heads, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Oh, yeah, there we go. Game breakers, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Gladiators, Connolly Lumi Lou for the Dolphins, number 211. Luminous, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. League Heads, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Luminous, Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Colour die cuts, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Damien Cook for the Dragons. League Heads, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Bang, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Dominic Young for the Knights. Game breakers, Nathan Cleary. Luminous, Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. League Heads, Tom Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Mercury, John Bateman for the Cowboys, number 419. Luminous, Jason Saab for Manly. Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. Colour die cut, James Schiller for the Knights. Luminous, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. League heads, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Luminous, Gehamat Shabarski for the Broncos. Game breakers, Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Luminous, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. League heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Bang Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. League heads for Storm. Luminous, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Colour die cut, Riley Smith for the Eels. Luminous, Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Game breakers, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Luminous, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Bang Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. League heads, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Milwaukee Photo Ica for Titans. Red colour die cut, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous, Ali Brigginshaw for the Broncos. League heads, Mich Kenny for the Panthers. Luminous, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Bang Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Game breakers, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous, Casey McLean for Panthers. League heads, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Luminous, Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Red Triumph, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. League heads, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Game breakers, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Alright, box number 5, done and dusted. Alright, box number 6. Colour die cut Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights. League heads Jareem Buller for the Tigers. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Bang, Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Game breakers, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Colour die cut Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous for Storm. League heads Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Brendan Smith for Rabbitohs. Game breakers Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. Bang, Philip Sammy for the Titans. Luminous Emma Veron for Sharks. League heads Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Samula Finu for the Tigers. Game breakers Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Mercury Nico Hines for the Sharks, number 358. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. League heads Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Philip Semi for Titans. Bang, Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Game breakers Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. League heads Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Colour die cuts Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League heads Dominic Young for Knights. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Game breakers Dane Gagai for Knights. Luminous Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Red Triumph Melbourne Storm. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. League heads Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Greg Marzhew for Knights. Game breakers John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Kuli Kefu for the Dolphins. League heads John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Bang Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. League heads Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous Carl Lawton for Cowboys. Gladiators Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs, number 230. Luminous Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Game breakers Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Bang Tom Trbojevic for Manly. Luminous Trent Laroe for Storm. League heads Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Colour die cut Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. Game breakers Chance Nicole Cockstad for the Warriors. Luminous Marata McCaw for the Warriors. Triumph Nathan Cleary for the Panthers. Luminous Moses Lee Otter for Panthers. League heads Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Bang Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. Game breakers Dylan Edwards for the Panthers. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Dally M. Luminous Brian Top for Panthers. And last pack for box number 6. League heads Stefano Utskamanu for Storm. Luminous Luke Lawlilly for Tigers. Right, quickly get these tidied up. Alright, box number 7. Oh, sorry about that. What are we up to? Box number 7. Let's go. Just over halfway through the case now. Game breakers Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Lycan King Toga for Dragons. League heads Sam Walker for the Roosters. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. Game breakers Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Luminous Alefiana Khan Piera for Titans. Bang Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. League heads Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. Colour die cuts Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Samima Torfa for the Raiders. Game breakers Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Bang Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. League heads Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Colour die cut Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous Damien Cook for the Dragons. Game breakers, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Mercury Gerhamat Shabarsky for the Broncos, number 80. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. League Heads Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hamoli Olika Atu for Manly. Game breakers, Lachlan Ilias for Dragons. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Bang Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. League Heads Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Luminous Ali Briganshaw for Broncos. Colour die cut Jake Averillo for the Dolphins. Luminous Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Game breakers Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Jerome Hughes for Storm. Bang AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Casey McLean for Panthers. League Heads Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Triumph Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. Colour die cut Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous William Kennedy for Sharks. Game breakers Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Dally M. League Heads Jake Chaboyevich for Manly. Luminous Sean Russell for the Eels. Bang Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Azali Hopkins for the Dragons. Gladiators Harry Grant for the Storm, number 236. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. League Heads Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous Jermaine McEwen for the Knights. Game breakers Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous James Tedesco for the Roosters. Bang Dream Baller for the Tigers. Luminous Max Plath for Dolphins. League Heads Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Red Triumph Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. League Heads Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Game breakers Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. League Heads Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. Colour die cut Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. League Heads Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. And that's another one. Done and dusted. Alright, box number 8. Gladiators Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos, number 245. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. League Heads Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. League Heads Tom Starling for the Raiders. Luminous Roger Tuivasa Shek for the Warriors. Game breakers Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Colour die cut, Zalen Zalesniak for the Warriors. Luminous, Terrell May for the Tigers. Oh, I'm not sure how long you've been gone for, mate. We've added a few more to the table and there's been a few hits in the tray. Game breakers, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jack Williams for the Eels. League heads, Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous, Stefano Utokumanu for Storm. Bang, Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Luminous, KO Weeks for the Raiders. League heads, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous, Beau Fermor for the Titans. Colour die cut, Hammer Fido for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Bang, Sanua Taruba for Tigers. Luminous, Alex Twile for Tigers. Game breakers, Drayden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous, Tyron Wishart for Storm. League heads, Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Luminous, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Colour die cut, Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Luminous, Sam Verrills for the Titans. Red Triumph, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Luminous, Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Mercury, Moses Leota for Panthers, number 311. Luminous, Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks. League heads, Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Bradman Best for the Knights. Game breakers, Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Luminous, Junior Paulo for the Eels. Bang, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous, Felice Kafusi for the Dolphins. League heads, Greg Marzu for the Knights. Luminous, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Red Triumph, Dream Buller for the Tigers. Luminous, Lachlan Ilias for the Dragons. League heads, Isaiah Katoa for the Dolphins. Luminous Billy Smith for the Roosters. Game breakers, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. Colour die cut, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Lyshan Albert Jones for the Warriors. League heads, Mawaki Foda for Titans. Luminous Reece Walsh for Broncos. Bang Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Toltor Koala for Manly. Game breakers, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. League heads, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Payne Haas for the Broncos. Bang James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Colour die cut, Alex Twile for Tigers. Luminous Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Game breakers, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. 2 packets left, box at number 8. Bang Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. And last packet for the box. League heads, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Ethan Bullimore for Manly. Box number 9. Engine number 9 on the New York Cruiser line. G'day Vivian. I'm not sure if you've seen, but I did reply to your comment just before we went live. And just in case you didn't, if we have a tied top tipper for the round, depending on, if there's only 2, we give them the choice where they can either split the gift card or randomize it between the 2 of them. If there's more, if there's 3 or more, it just becomes easier to randomize it between however many there is. But when the margin comes into play, like this round, we had 2 perfect rounds. I can't remember the margin for the second one, but I know the margin for the first was only 2. And in saying that, if you go to the person, I think in spot 3, yeah, because the first 2 got the perfect round, spot 3 got 7 out of 8 in a perfect margin. So they were 1 off. If they would have had, if they would have also got 8 out of 8. They would have won with the 0 margin. So, yeah, I hope that answers it. Game breakers, Trent Leroux for Storm. Luminous, Ali Latua for the Warriors. League heads, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Bang, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Game breakers, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Luminous, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. League heads, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous, Harry Grant for the Storm. League heads, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Colour die cut, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Game breakers, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Luminous, Zach Labour for the Cowboys. Bang, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. League heads, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. Game breakers, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Isaiah Katoa for the Dolphins. Triumph, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous, Georgia Hale for Titans. League heads, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Game breakers, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Bang, Brian Topp for Panthers. Luminous, Mich Kenny for Panthers. Game breakers, Tegan Demick for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Red Triumphs, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous, Billy Walters for the Broncos. Gladiators, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders, number 572. Luminous, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. League Heads, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Colour die cut, Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Game Breakers, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Jalen DeGroot for the Titans. Bang, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. League Heads, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous, Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Colour die cuts, Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Marky Mark for the Roosters. League Heads, Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Bang, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Luminous, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Luminous, Latu Vinu for Tigers. League Heads, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Mercury, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons, number 120. Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. League Heads, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. 4 packets to go for box number 8. League Heads, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Connor Tracy, die cut for the Bulldogs. Luminous Angelina for the Bulldogs. League heads, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Bang, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Nathan Cleary for the Panthers. Alright. Get these out of the way. Colour die cut, Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous Georgia Hale for the Titans. League heads, Connolly Loomy Lou for Dolphins. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Red Triumph, Molly Olaka-Atu for Manly. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. Game Breakers, Loco Pacifici Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous Mich Kenny for Panthers. League heads, Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Adam Whenua Blake for the Sharks. Bang, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for Knights. Red Triumph, Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Luminous Jalen de Groot for Titans. League heads, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Die cut, Bronson Sherry for the Bulldogs. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. League heads, Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous Marky Mark for the Roosters. Game Breakers, Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Bang, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Wade Egan for the Warriors. League Heads, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous, Latu Fainu for the Tigers. Game Breakers, Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Luminous, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Die cut, Teague Wilton for the Sharks. Luminous, Tom Dearden for the Cowboys. League Heads, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Alafian Khan Piera for Titans. Luminous, Keanu Kinney for Titans. Gladiators, Jacob Little for the Dragons, number 314. And that's the end of that one. Alright, Angelina Luminous for the Bulldogs. League Heads, Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Bang, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. League Heads, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Die cut, Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous, Billy Walters for the Broncos. Bang, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Game Breakers, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Luminous, Greg Marschall for Knights. Die cut, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous, Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. League Heads, Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Game breakers, Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. League heads, Brian Kelly for Titans. Luminous Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Bang Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Game breakers, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. League heads, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Trent LaRoe for Storm. Mercury Sam Walker for the Roosters, number 109. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. League heads, Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. Bang Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Marata Nakor for the Warriors. Alright, another box done and dusted. Now we're up to box number 11. Second last box for the case. Die cut Philip Semi for the Titans. Luminous Jonah Pezzett for Storm. League heads, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Game breakers, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Luminous Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Bang Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Sarah Toga Tuki for the Tigers. League heads, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Connolly Lumi Lou for the Dolphins. Red Triumph for the Warriors. Luminous Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Game breakers, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous Tanila Paseka for Manly. League heads, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. Game breakers, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Bang Katoni Staggs for Broncos. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous Cam Munster for Storm. League heads, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous Brian Kelly for the Titans. Colour die cut, Brian Totter for Panthers. Luminous Bailey Simonson for the Eels. League heads, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Jesse Southwell Luminous for the Knights. Game breakers, Alex Twal for the Tigers. Luminous Luciano Lay Lua for the Dragons. Bang Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Tony Staggs for the Broncos. League heads, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Isaiah Papali'i for Panthers. Daly M Predictor. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Mercury Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders, number 199. Luminous Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Game breakers, Jareem Buller for the Tigers. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. League heads, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous Jermaine McEwen for the Knights. Bang Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous James Tedesco for the Roosters. Game breakers, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Max Plath for the Dolphins. League heads, Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Colour die cut Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Bang Tolotoko for Manly. Luminous Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. League Heads Ethan Bullimore for Manly. Luminous Blaze Tulagi for Panthers. Game Breakers White for the Roosters. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. Gladiators Zach Labour for the Cowboys, number 388. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. League Heads Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Colour die cut Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Bang Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. League Heads Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Sonua Taruva for the Tigers. Game Breakers Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Will Penasini for the Eels. League Heads Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Alex Seafarth for the Tigers. Red Triumph James Tedesco for the Roosters, and Keon Colomatini Luminous for the Rabbitohs. Alright, move this second last pile of cards out of the way. And we're up to the last box of the case. League Heads Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Game Breakers James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Archie's good arvo. Hope Manly got some hits. I can see at least one sleeved number hit in the tray. But remembering we also have our larger hits on the table waiting for the end. Xavier Wilson die cut for Broncos. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League heads, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Game breakers, Asaya Katoa for the Dolphins. Luminous Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Instant wins. Brian To'a, Luminous for Panthers. Bang Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. Luminous Luke Law Lily for Tigers. Game breakers, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. To be honest, I honestly don't know Archie. Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. And we still have the 2 hobby boxes to open. So really, we still have plenty to go. We're only not even halfway through this box. Jack Whiten die cut for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. League heads, Jerome Luai for Tigers. Luminous Tui Kamikamika for Storm. Bang Joash for the Eels. Luminous Jake Trebojevic for Manly. League heads, Valami Kikia for the Bulldogs. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Colour die cut Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game breakers, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous White for the Roosters. Red Triumph for the Panthers. Luminous Jack Bostock for Dolphins. League heads, Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Lindsay Smith for the Panthers. Bang Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. League heads, Hamoli Olaka-Atu for Manly. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. League heads, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Hey all. That's unlucky. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Oh, get open. League heads, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Moses Leota for Panthers. Game breakers, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Bang, Alafiana Kanti Era for Titans. Luminous, Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. League heads, Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Gladiators, Alafiana Kanti Era for Titans. Number 140. Luminous, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Game breakers, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Luminous, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. League heads, Liam Martin for the Panthers. Luminous, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Game breakers, Bo Fermor for the Titans. Luminous, Hugo Savala for Roosters. Bang, Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous, Falago for Storm. League heads, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous, Brendan Smith for Rabbitohs. Colour die cut, Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous, Savala Tamali for the Raiders. Where are we at? Sixth last packet for the case. Game breakers, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. Red Triumph, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous, Samola Fainu for the Tigers. Mercury, Samola Fainu for the Tigers. Number 418. Luminous, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. League heads, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Joash for the Eels. Luminous Philip Semi for the Titans. Bang Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. And that finishes off the case. So let's just move these out of the way quickly. Alright, 2 hobby boxes to go. Excuse me. Alright, first of our 2 hobby boxes. Let's go. Luminous Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Number 2. There we go. I was just thinking to myself, we didn't really have any low numbers so far in the retail case. Blake Brayley in the gold die cut for the Sharks, number 196. Luminous Brian Top for Panthers, number 559. And Playmakers Braden Trindle for the Sharks, number 18. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs, number 598. Etched Luke Garner for the Panthers, number 12. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons, number 614. Gold Gladiators Brendan Smith for the Panthers, number 139. Luminous White for the Roosters. Gold die cut Tom Starling for the Raiders, number 88. Luminous Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers, number 118. Gold die cut Chance Nico Klokstad, number 138. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights, number 351. We have a Dally M Platinum Predictor. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos, number 639. Luminous Luke Law Lily for the Tigers, number 198. Jake Averillo etched for the Dolphins, number 150. Luminous Murray Talagi for Cowboys, number 297. Gold Gladiators, Chance Nicole Cockstad for the Warriors, number 53. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors, number 466. Mercury Sterling Roger Tuivasa Sheck for Warriors, number 61. Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Zach Lomax gold die cut for the Eels. Luminous Tui Kamikamika for Storm, number 17. Gold die cut Jake Trbojevic for Manly, number 504. Gold die cut Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs, number 233. 3 packets left for our first hobby box. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters, number 722. Moses Sulai, Luminous for the Dragons. Gold die cut Harry Grant for the Storm, number 110. And last packet from the first hobby box. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels, number 584. And Ethan Strange, number 160 in the etched. Alright, time for box number 2. Alright, hobby box number 2. Luminous Samula Fainu for the Tigers, number 300. Colour die cut Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos, number 193. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Mackenzie Wheel Luminous for Cowboys, number 337. Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins, number 245. Triumph James Tedesco for the Roosters, number 34. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs, 197. Playmakers Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys, number 104. Luminous Philip Semi for the Titans. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos, number 393. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans, in the gold die cut, sorry. Gold Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights, number 324. Jaden Sewer, Luminous for the Dragons, number 556. Mercury Sterling, number 70. Reece Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights, number 369. Molly Olica R2 etched for Manly, 178. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Gold die cut Dominic Young for the Knights, number 229. Gold die cut Adam Reynolds for the Broncos, number 607. Luminous Hugo Savala for the Roosters, 185. Gold die cuts, Tommy Turbo for Manly, 163. Luminous Falago for Storm. John Bateman etched for Cowboys, number 40. Cheers. Luminous Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs, number 490. I'm not going to lie, I'm starting to struggle at this point. We're almost finished, only 3 left. Gold Gladiators, Harry Grant, number 71. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders, number 549. Gold die cut Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Alright, lucky last. Luminous Emma Veron for the Sharks. And etched Emery Gula for the Dragons, number 141. Alright, let's run through our hits. Starting up with our one out of our starter packs. This is a number 57, Clive Churchill Predictor signature, and it's for the Panthers. Where's our team list? There it is. Panthers is George Grispos. Congratulations. Number 57 on that one. Next up was our gold tryout. Number 7. Oh. Who is number 7? It may be him. We may have a jersey number. Jermaine Isako. I'm not sure on that one. Not sure who their thing is. Alright. State of Origin. Number 39 in the Blues, Stefano Utokumanu. Sorry, I'm just running through my head who he goes to. Having a mental blank, which is nothing surprising. We will work that out in a moment. Alright, next up, Dally M Rookie Predictor signature. Number 166 for the Rabbitohs, Stephen Casey. Dally M Predictor 171. Addo Carr for the Eels. Next up, Dally M Predictor number 203. Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Alright, next up, Dally M Predictor number 167. Chanel Harris to Vita for the Warriors. Alright, second last one. Instant win for the Knights. Keith Hunter with the Knights. Alright, our last hit for the break. Dally M Predictor Wild Card number 62 for the Raiders. Keith Hunter with the Raiders as well. Alright guys, well that's it for this one. Excuse me. Oh, 62 on that one. Just a reminder, tomorrow's break will be delayed by a little while. Probably about midday. We'll see how we go. I will put a comment on the post when I know for sure. The new mega combo deal was listed this morning. It no longer contains the locker, but it does now have the blaster box. So go and check that out. And I'll be putting the post up for top tipper. Congratulations to Craig on that one. And I will go and check out the check the score giveaway and list the new one. So plenty going on, guys. Please make sure you are in the Facebook group because that's where it all happens. If you're not in there, I promise you are missing out. The pick the score giveaway, for instance, is only in the Facebook group. You must be in that group and comment on the post each week for your entry to get in. Alright guys, that's it.